Topic 9, the 4 doors of change. Hi Ellie, we saved the best till last. This is the dreaded change management conversation, isn't it? And we know that it's very much a focus point of Safe Work New South Wales, and it's something that can be done well, but can often not be done well.
Yes, Liz, I think change is one of those really big topics. Change is everywhere. We don't live in a static environment. The world is changing, our workplace is changing. It's how we navigate change that matters, and what we do as leaders, as teams, and also as individuals around how we navigate change. So what I wanted to do today was share a really simple model that helps people to kind of navigate change, and it's a practical framework so that change doesn't feel so overwhelming, because usually it's the overwhelm that really kind of creates the psychosocial hazard. So what we want to do is kind of step it down into what Jason Clark calls 4 doors of change, where we can kind of map it out and think about what's changing, what's staying the same, and what are the new opportunities. So let's go through the 4 doors. So the first door is really simple, things that we used to be able to do and still can do. So that's around stability. So whenever we're faced with a change, not everything in our world will be changing. There are still things that will be the same. So if we take an example of moving offices, moving premises. So the first one, we're still going to have our teams. We're still going to have our workplace, our culture. We're still going to have everything, our jobs, our customers. That's going to stay the same. Door number 2, things we couldn't do before and still can't do. So these are what we call the boundaries. So any sort of change will not fix everything in our world. So we'll get some great opportunities, but it's not the magic bullet. So there's still some things that perhaps this change might not fix, or some things that we still can't do. So in our example about moving an office, things that we couldn't do before and still can't do, well, unfortunately, we still have to come to work. So again, we start to think about some of the things that just are kind of going to be those boundaries within our work. Door 3, things we used to do but can't do now. So every change involves loss, and we need to acknowledge that. So our office move, we might have had our favourite coffee shop just next door where we went. They knew our order, they knew our name, they made the best toasted sandwiches. They're not going to be next door anymore. So there's a loss that goes with that. We might lose our window seat. We might be sitting somewhere else within the office. We might have a longer commute. So there is loss that we need to acknowledge, and we need to help people through. And in our first series, we talked about the Sarah model. So that also helps us to kind of work through that transition through change. So surprise, shock, anger, resistance, resentment, acceptance, and hope. So again, we need to acknowledge those losses and help people move through that. And then the last door, door 4, is things we couldn't do before but can do now. Now this is the opportunity. And this is really important as well, because not all change is bad. We're changing for a reason because there's opportunity there. So we also need to take the time to think about what are the opportunities, what's the difference. So perhaps our old office was cramped, perhaps it was dark, perhaps it wasn't optimal conditions. Brand new office, light, airy, better position, much better work environment, all of those sorts of things. So we need to also acknowledge the opportunities. So this model is a really easy framework that we can do personally, and we can also do as a team to help people think about and kind of just think about the different doors of change. And that really helps people to navigate what's happening around them.
So how would you put that into practice? Would you actually literally talk about each door, or would you just pick up on the theme and say, okay guys, there are 4 ways to look at this and let's focus on the positives? Like which one would you do?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Liz. So we really need to acknowledge every single door, because quite often when we just focus on the positives, people tend to kind of go, it's the loss that we feel. So it's not the change that people often resist, it's the losses that come with the change.
Yeah.
So really important to be open and honest about the losses that happen with any sort of change and work through. But it's also not about staying, remember, below the line, above the line? It's not about staying below the line. We want to also shift to opportunity, to ownership, to accountability, to responsibility around the why we're doing this. And this is again around those opportunities to change. So every door is valuable. You might spend different amount of times in each door, but I think having that open conversation with people and also consulting, getting their feedback as well is very valuable.
And how does that fit in with the Sarah model? Would you look at the Sarah model and see where individuals are, perhaps because you were saying in an earlier session that everyone has their own time of working through change. So for those who perhaps haven't got through it as quickly as others, can you use this 4 doors to help them through that?
Absolutely, you could use it in a coaching conversation. So thinking about, again, where they are in the Sarah model, if they're stuck in anger, if they're stuck in rejection or the R or the revenge phase, it might be time to sit down and have that conversation with them and then start to kind of unpack each door and think about and get them to name what's going on for them so that you can help them to kind of think about how we can navigate through this together and what they need to be able to work through the change in a positive way, while still acknowledging that change is hard.
Yes, right. So, key takeaways.
Key takeaways. So again, what we need to do is we need to focus on, what's staying the same. That's really important to think. All change, there's a lot of stuff that won't be changing. Sometimes we miss that step and we talk about all this new stuff, but we forget about our culture, our people, all those really important foundations that will not be lost in terms of any sort of change. So really kind of take some time to think about those cultural foundations within our organisation, within a change. Clearly explain what is changing and what is not changing. Ambiguity creates stress. And acknowledge the losses and highlight the opportunities to build trust and optimism. So honest, open conversations are a must.
And communicating with clarity.
Communicating with clarity.
Because it's that uncertainty, that's what unsettles people, isn't it?
It is. So when we don't know, we tend to kind of fill the gaps. And our brain is wired to go to the negative because we need to keep ourselves safe. So we have threat or reward. Our brain is wired to look for threats. So if we don't know something, we're more than likely to go to a negative response to keep ourselves safe. So sometimes it can be telling people, I don't have all the answers, but this is what I do know. And open it up for conversation, because again, they might have questions that we think we've covered, but perhaps we haven't been clear. So again, having that two-way conversation.
And last but not least, you've got a downloadable to help our viewers.
We do have a downloadable. Again, it steps through the 4 doors of change. It explains each door, what it looks like, and it's got some reflection points for leaders, for teams, and things and strategies that you can do to help people to navigate change in a positive way.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thanks, Liz.